Coming up on AFL Exchange, the latest out of Essendon after a tumultuous 24 hours. Are the Swans emerging as a genuine threat to Geelong, the #1 seed? And we'll also have the NAB Rising Star nominee. It's all coming up on a jam-packed episode of AFL Exchange. Hello and welcome back to AFL Exchange on a day where the Bombers have simply dominated headlines. Ben Rutten's future, well, it's still very much up in the air. Sarah Ollie here with Cal Toomey and Riley Beveridge. Riles, it's just been one of those days.
Has been. Didn't expect it when we woke up, but yeah, it's been quite strange. Cal, you're probably the best to speak about this. It's just been...
Well, there was going to be some fallout after that performance.
There had to be. That's the thing.
They were terrible on Sunday, and they've been terrible for 2 weeks, and they've been terrible for the best part of the season. And geez, if we stretched out, we could probably keep going beyond that. But there's clearly a lot happening at Essendon, but a lot around the competition too. It's taken the gloss a little bit off what's going to be such a massive round 23. So looking forward to chatting about that and the rest on the show tonight.
You're right, because we're just 1 week away from finals and so many storylines to discuss. But Essendon is where we begin, Cal. Where to from here for the Bombers? We know that they've had 2 board meetings. The president, Paul Brasher, he's stepped down. They've got a new president now in Dave Barham. Ben Rutten, that's the next big one, isn't it?
Well, that's where all the focus will be, won't it? And it has to be. 3 months after they announced an internal review, they've had to go external. So day of turmoil, really, to see that unfold, as I think it was probably on the cards as soon as they left the field on Sunday night, being absolutely belted by a Port Adelaide side that scored so freely like most teams do against Essendon. They're the easy beats of the competition this year, unfortunately, for Ben Rutten. And external reviews rarely come with good endings for senior coaches. There's no doubt about that. And the fact that Ben Rutten is still there at the moment doesn't guarantee that he's going to be there next year or for that much longer. It's hard to see the position not being untenable to a degree, I think, at this point, having what we've seen from the club over the past couple of days and the past couple of weeks. And the way they've played for the majority of the season really has been confusing. It's been messy. And that ultimately is a reflection on the coach. Now, there's one of 3 things, I think, for the Bombers. They either don't know what they're meant to be doing, they know but don't believe in what they're meant to be doing, or they simply just won't do what they're told. Now, any of those 3 things, in terms of a way a team has to play, is a poor reflection on the senior coach, and he hasn't been able to get them to the point where they are able to do that consistently. Now, consistency is, or lack thereof, has been a bugbear of this team and this club for the best part of 15 years. This isn't a new thing that he's just all of a sudden he has inherited. This is not a new thing that's a part of that Bombers lineup. But when you look at the club on the whole, the external review shouldn't just look at the senior coach and the coaching department. It's got to look at all areas because there's question marks on a whole number of issues at that club. Now, one of them is the fitness department, where you have to say they've had so many reoccurrences this year in terms of soft tissue injuries. There was another one last week with Will Snelling having another hamstring. You'd have to say that they've lost a lot of players this year that has cost them a shot at having a top team available every week. List management, where are they at in terms of that list?
Yeah.
Where actually are they at? Where do they think they're at? Are they there? Are they near it? Are they getting there? Are they on the way back? They've never really committed to a full-blown rebuild. They've dipped into early parts of the draft over successive years, 15 and 16 in particular, but they haven't really gone full throttle at it, have they?
And the only year they did was at the end of 2020, and that was somewhat unintentionally. It was because players that they wanted to keep left the football club.
Yeah, that's right. And they've always flirted with a big fish here and there and managed to land a couple here and there. But I think there's a lot of things that need to be looked at in terms of the performance of that club. And I think there's been a culture of acceptance of that to some degree, and without the culture of elite performance there.
Well, that is true. We know that ultimately it does come down to the senior coach. That's what history tells us. And there's one Alistair Clarkson, Riley, who is out there looking for a new role and has been linked today to the Bombers.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that's probably going to have to come down to it in their decision at the end of the day. I mean, I don't think it would be, for as many questions that you can place on Ben Rutten after this, it would be strange for them to sack Ben Rutten or move Ben Rutten on if they weren't very confident of getting Alistair Clarkson.
Who's got a year to go in his contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you on Rutten, Kel, just because you probably know the space more than anyone in the industry. And we've spoken about this since day one with Ben Rutten. Is he a second-year coach or is he a third-year coach? And how do you think he's being reviewed on his performance internally from the Bombers?
Well, they would know the level of control that he had over how the team was preparing to play in 2020. And 2020 was a terrible year for the club as well. Now, that 2 out of 3 years being pretty awful in terms of performance isn't a great track record. Now, they would say that he didn't have full reins, and he didn't have full reins. But he had a fair say in terms of how they were trying to play in 2020. 2020 was a tough year to be doing that. I would give a bit of an out in terms of how they're trying to structure up and create a style that season. But ultimately, their style's incomprehensible. You don't really know how they're trying to play. Now, he was going to be a guy who brought in some defensive elements. That hasn't happened. It just hasn't happened. Now, I spoke to Zach Merritt last week. He said it. He said, I know Essendon supporters are sick of hearing about learnings, but they keep talking about learnings. Essendon players have learnt that much, they could go to Harvard. They'd fail the exam, though, because on game day, the holes are just picked through them.
Yeah.
And that happens regularly.
Defensively has been where they've been worse this year. Their inability to defend passages from the back half, which is the most simple part of the game.
Yeah.
And it's been the worst part about them this season.
They're the Manchester United of the AFL. For the soccer fans out there, the powerhouse who once had the off-field and the on-field matched, now it's the off-field that's in a really good spot at us, and they've just broken the all-time membership record. They've got the best facilities in the AFL, but they're trading on past glories at the moment, and they haven't been able to get past that shadow of a great coach or manager. So there's some similarities there.
Yeah, there's also structural issues at the top that are infiltrating through to game day, which is probably reflects for both clubs as well. So,
How do you feel if you're Ben Rutten?
It would have been a weird day for him.
Well, you would have felt better Sunday morning, I think, than Sunday night. It would be hard to ignore what was happening during that game. I mean, that second quarter was the lowest point of their season, and they've had a couple.
Yeah.
The Sydney game in round 9, I think it was pretty bad.
But then the next time they played Sydney, they'd won 4 or 5 games, and it started to look like they were piecing things together.
One of those was against a very depleted Brisbane. It was, they won, but it was a depleted Brisbane with the COVID outs. It's going to be a fascinating few days. Though.
Yeah, watch this space.
Sarah.
Yes.
The Essendon situation has taken away from what was another pretty remarkable round of footy. I mean, we go into it round 23 with top spots secured, but top 4 certainly isn't. Top 8 certainly isn't. The bottom pick 1 certainly isn't. I mean, how do you expect the ladder to be looking after next week?
Well, you know me, I love the ladder predictor, and I've been on it all weekend. So this is how my ladder is shaping up. The Cats, by far and away, they've already had the minor premiership sewn up now. The Swans I've got into, the Lions 3. The Pies still holding on to 4th there, those 3 teams on 64 points. The Dockers 5th, Demons 6th, Tigers 7th, and Bulldogs on 8th in 48
Richmond
points.
Melbourne would be a good elimination final.
Wouldn't it? And wouldn't you be irate if you were Melbourne coming up against Richmond at the MCG in an elimination final?
You would.
How good. Dusty back. All the big hallmarks of a big game. So I've got the Blues as that side note, just missing out. I mean, Sunday at the G. 2 old rivals going head to head, one trying to get top 4, the other just trying to get into that 8th position. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. And by the time they start playing that game, they won't know the result of the one before them. So, I mean, it'd be fun if they were at the exact same time, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it, to see what was happening there? But the Bulldogs, they need to win against Hawthorn down in Launceston to get that 8th spot. You think they would do it?
Well, they have to do it just for the theatre of it as well, don't they?
They were awful on Saturday, the Bulldogs, against the Giants.
Yeah, they've been really inconsistent this year. But that is my ladder predictor, Riley.
I still think Carlton could roll Collingwood on Sunday. I'm probably going to tip Collingwood, but I don't see any reason why Carlton can't do it, particularly with De Goey in doubt. Ginnivan's been a really good player for Collingwood all year. My ladder, Geelong, Sydney, Melbourne, Collingwood, top 4, Fremantle, Brisbane, Richmond, the Bulldogs.
So you think Melbourne wins as well?
I had been leaning towards Brisbane, but having watched both those games pretty closely, Friday night, Saturday night, I think I saw more from Melbourne than I saw from Brisbane. Now,
Brisbane was off a 5-day break and interstate.
It was. You're right.
I reckon the
But
Lions
playing
are
St
just
Kilda versus
Yeah.
at the Gabba,
Carlton,
though.
I think.
A different proposition.
Well, maybe. And their record suggests that they are better there, no doubt. But I think Melbourne are still a stronger team when it comes down to it.
All right. We've all gone for something different then. I've gone Geelong, Sydney, Brisbane, Freo, Melbourne, Collingwood, Richmond, Carlton.
Ah,
I think the Blues win on Sunday.
okay.
I actually didn't think they played that well on Saturday night, and they got to within a kick of a pretty good team in Melbourne. I think they probably have more riding on the game. I even think if you would listen to the way Craig McRae spoke after Sunday's game against Sydney, just the way he spoke about Jordan De Goey, and he just said, we've got a lot to lose at this situation by playing De Goey. So I think in that instance, like, do they err on the side of caution because they have got a lot to lose? I mean, would you rather top four, or would you rather a fully fit and rested Jordan De Goey for the first week of finals, regardless of who you play? I mean, and there's no guarantee to beat Carlton, regardless, even with Jordan De Goey. So I think that they might err on the side of the caution on a couple of those fitness issues. And yeah, I have Western Bulldogs and St Kilda just missing out. I think from a neutral perspective, the ladder that happens, if Brisbane win and if Carlton wins, from a neutral perspective, it almost sets up a better first week of finals. You'd have Collingwood, Richmond, and you'd have Melbourne, Carlton as an elimination finals. Like for a neutral fan, they are two awesome elimination finals.
Riley,
yes,
is Sydney Geelong's biggest threat for the flag? Are you at that point in your mind where you think the Swans are the biggest challenger?
I think a lot of it will depend on what happens this weekend again. I'm still not. I still think Brisbane is the biggest challenger for Geelong at the moment. And I think if they can beat Melbourne this week and lock up a top four spot, then that almost solidifies that belief.
How much is the pressure going to be on them in the first final?
Oh, massively.
I think they're the most under pressure team going to the finals.
I completely agree with you. I think their record for the last 2-3 years, particularly that 2020 season when they had it all in their own terms, has been awful at that stage of the season. I don't know if this plays into it, but I tend to think their fragility late in games where they've sort of not backed themselves. They've given up big leads in late games in the last few weeks. They maybe would have done it again on Friday night if Max King could have kicked straight in some crucial moments. I think that sort of plays into it. There's this pressure around them now. They've got to be top four to give themselves the best possible opportunity. But in saying that, I also just think, and you see what Cam Rayner did on Friday night. You've seen what Zach Bailey, Charlie Cameron, Link McCarthy have done at different stages this season. Danaher, McStay, Hipwood, if they can fire at any particular time. I think they've got the most, maybe barring Geelong, given what they've been able to do with Cameron Hawkins, the second most potent forward line in the competition. And if those players can just turn it on any given afternoon or evening, then they'll be incredibly hard to stop. They've got match winners. And just quietly, I think Oscar McInerney now is become one of the best and most influential rucks in the competition, and with their midfield that they've got, helps them so often in those type of games. So forward half, I think they're incredibly potent, and I think that gives you enough weapons to win a September game.
Are they peaking at the right time of the year, though?
I don't think they're peaking at all at the moment.
Yeah.
They've been pretty bad, but then again, not bad, that's too far. They've been not great. They've been good without being great, but in saying that, you only need to win potentially 3 games.
Yeah.
Like, it could turn pretty quickly.
Well, they'd want to make it turn pretty fast because we know earlier this season when they did come up against the D's at the MCG, that was a big fat fail. I actually think the Swans are peaking at the right time of year. 6 in a row. They've got this air of confidence about them, which I don't know if it's just because they're a youthful team, but they're looking really plucky. They're strong again at home because they had that time where the SCG wasn't suiting them, but I think they've won their past 6 or 7 in a row at the SCG now. Look, I love what the Swans are doing, and clearly I'm a little bit biased in that department. I think they could threaten Geelong, but at this point, for me, it's Geelong by the Flemington Straight. I feel like they are just so far the number 1 seed, and that there'll be teams that can perhaps challenge them. But if they're playing their best footy, is any team beating Geelong?
I think Melbourne can. I think, look at Melbourne's defence. I feel like they've got the key defenders to match Geelong's key forwards. I'm just worried about their own forward group. And Ben Brown in particular. He's running under the ball more times than he's marking it. I think he's reading off the play at the moment is a bit off. They keep scrounging opportunities, though, and they've got the midfield to match it clearly with... matching up the midfield Geelong v Melbourne. You're taking Melbourne, aren't you? It's particularly with the ruck advantage of Max Gawn and how well he's playing. So I still think they have the biggest array of weaponry to challenge the Cats, but those are my top two at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch and fascinating to hear about this player, Riles.
Yes. That is the Armaguard truck circling us. We've got our NAB AFL Rising Star nominee. This one will be no surprise given his performance on Friday night. He's been super for a month now. He's been really good in this new tagging role. It is Marcus Windhager. 21 disposals, 7 marks, 5 clearances on the weekend. He kept Lockie Neal to just 16 touches. It follows some exceptional work, as we've spoken about in previous weeks, on some of the best players in the competition. Tim Kelly kept him to 4 disposals a few weeks ago. So he's really flourished in that role, having arrived at the Saints as a next generation academy prospect.
And Marcus is going to join us on the line. Marcus, congratulations and welcome to AFL Exchange.
Hey guys, thank you very much for having me.
How stoked were you to get the Rising Star nominee nod, given your performance against Lockie Neal at the weekend, just keeping him to 16 touches and collecting 21 of your own?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool award, I guess, and something I'm quite appreciative of.
How did you study him, Marcus? What did you do? What was the sort of plan going in, and what was it like out there?
Yeah, I watched a bit of Vision throughout the week and spoke to a few of the boys that have played against him a few times. Seb Ross, who's in the midfield as well, had a few pointers, and I went through a lot of vision with our line coach Benny McGlynn. And yeah, obviously he's an outstanding player, and he was tricky to play against, but yeah, it took a lot of preparation.
You did a great job. I was at the game on Friday night. I did notice a few of the Lions boys, once they realised that you were sent to stop him, were in your face a few times. You got some treatment from Dane Zorko a couple of times. What was that like, knowing that they were coming after you because you were coming after one of theirs?
Yeah, it was it was well expected. Yeah, a few of the boys talked about it, and they sort of warned me that it'd come, and I just kept a clear focus, just not to retaliate, because I knew if I did that, they'd be doing their job, getting under my skin. But yeah, I guess I saw it coming, but yeah, it riles you up a bit.
Marcus, talk us through the role. When did Rats come to you and say, "Hey, I want you to try stopping some of the competition's best players"? And what was your reaction to it when he first told you?
Yeah, so the West Coast game against Tim Kelly, that was the first time I sort of played this role. And at training that week, one of the Ben McGlynn actually came to me and he said, I want you to have a go at tagging Sebi Ross, just in a little bit of match sim. And I thought, maybe I might tag this week. And Rats came to me and he said, you're going to tag Tim Kelly this week. And something very new to me. I've never done it before, but yeah, I've sort of taken it in my stride and gone along with it, and had a few challenging roles the last couple of weeks against some of the competition's best midfielders. But yeah, it's something I enjoy, and I think it's a good learning opportunity for me.
You're coming towards the end of your first season in the AFL. How's the body feeling? Because we know you had a couple of injury setbacks in your draft year. You obviously dealt with the back injury as well. I mean, how's the body feeling, and how have you found your first year in the AFL system?
Yeah, as you said, I had a bit of back injury at the start of the year and wasn't sure how much footy I was going to play. But yeah, I think because I stuck to my rehab, and since I got it right, I've just made sure that I stay on top of it and don't go down that path again. So yeah, it feels good, and I've got to do a lot of recovery, I guess, post-game and post-training to stay on top of it. But yeah, it hasn't spurred up at all this year, and I felt really good week in, week out.
A few clubs out there reckon you weren't sore at all, just a chance to get you through a little bit later in the draft, Marcus. You've played 17 games, you've been fit and firing.
Yeah, it's funny because, yeah, I was almost preparing just to, I guess, be in rehab for a while, and over the summer pre-season, I guess, I got to work a bit in the rehab group, and yeah, I didn't want to go down the path of back surgery. It's one that's probably not the most enjoyable, and yeah, I guess yeah, once I got on top of it, I wanted to have a good year and try to play as much footy as I could.
You've been out there in recent times, of course, with Mitch Owens as well, who's one of our favourites on AFL Exchange over the past couple of years. He was playing the ruck at times on Friday night. How's it been to share the first year with him, another next generation academy prospect?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I've been playing with Mitch for as long as I can remember, and in juniors he was always a smaller kid, and last couple of years he shot up and put on a bit of size. So it was quite funny, and something I've had a bit of a laugh about seeing him in the ruck against Big O as well, who's a pretty big unit, and he actually did well. To his credit, to go against him, but it's been pretty awesome to play a few games this year with him, and I think he's really coming a long way, and he's going to be a star.
And Marcus, we're just a couple of weeks away from the NAB Rising Star Award. If you were selecting, who would you be giving your votes to?
I think Nick Dacos is a pretty clear favourite. He's had a pretty good year, and it's honestly quite impressive what he's been able to do. But I think he's got it in the bag.
Just lastly, Marcus, Sydney this week. Who you got? Chad Warner, Luke Parker. Who are you going to?
No, I don't know yet. We haven't spoken about it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck against the Swans. And if you do get an assignment, best of luck there as well.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Marcus Windhager joining us there. He's doing a good job, isn't he? He just gets these assignments and he makes a bit of an impact. And I wonder if that's going to be a bit of a theme of finals, Cal, is that we might see a few more tagging roles or cooling roles.
Cooler. Yeah, he's doing a good job. It's an interesting one. He played midfield, half back, forward. He's been a bit of an all-rounder coming through. So they've clearly picked up his appetite to stick to a task, and he's done a good job of it so far.
He has indeed. Now, Riles, the Rising
Yes.
Star, it's just a couple of weeks away now. Give us your votes. We just heard there that it would be Nick Dacos. If Marcus was making his selection, where would you head?
Are we going count up or count down?
I reckon you've got to count from lowest votes to highest votes.
So
one.
one is the 5th ranked.
Yep.
So 1 I've given to Nick Martin from Essendon.
Yep.
Super consistent all year. 2, John Newcombe from Hawthorn. We know what he's done throughout the season. 3, Jack Ginnivan kicked a bunch of goals and done it with the weight of his world. What I can only imagine will be the weight of the world on his shoulders a few times this year, given the media attention he's had. 4, Sam De Koning. He's been fantastic all year. And 5, I've given to...
What's his name again?
It was a tough choice, but I've given it to Nick Dacos.
Well, we've actually got the same 5. John Newcombe for 1 vote for me.
Yep.
Average 23 touches played every game. It's hard to pass up those numbers. Nick Martin, fantastic selection. Average 20 disposals and a goal a game. That's been a terrific year for him. He'll finish top 5 in Essendon's best affairs. I've got 3 votes for Jack Ginnivan as well. 33 goals, huge impact. Sam De Koning has stood some of the best key tools in the comp. And, of course, Nick Dacos at 5 votes. I don't think there was any doubt about that. Average 26 touches. Been a game changer for the Pies in a lot of ways. He's been tagged now. It's pretty remarkable what he's achieved.
This is going to be a little bit boring because ours are all kind of similar. Although I don't have Nick Martin in my top 5.
Wow.
I've given 1
Whack.
vote. And I think I've been a little bit just seduced by the recency bias of this, is Noah Cumberland. I've given him 1 vote.
Okay.
2 to John Newcombe, 3 Jack Ginnivan, 4 Sam De Koning, and 5 Nick Dacos.
So some of the other ones who were sort of around the mark. Corey Durn's had a pretty good year.
Yeah.
Gone under the radar to some degree, but 15 or 16 goals in playing most games. Heath Chapman's had a pretty good year when he's been out there. Jake Bowie's first half of the year was better than his second, but still a consistent time when he's been playing. Josh Ward played some pretty good footy of late in
grown as the
particular.
season's gone on, yeah.
Jamarra Ugle-Hagen's grown as the season's gone. It wouldn't shock me if he got a vote
Yeah.
somewhere. So there's a few good names in there. And Elijah Hollins, you mentioned last week, could he be one for next year's Rising
good one.
Star? I mean, he's shown some pretty exciting things so far.
All right, Cal, there's a stack of quality jumper numbers opening up at different clubs around the competition with trades and draft and retirements and delistings as it happens.
People love jumper numbers.
Yeah, so which players should be in line to take some of them?
Well, number 5 is available at Essendon. So Dev Smith has retired. It's a very famous number at the Bombers. Of course, James Hird, Premiership skipper. Terry Danaher, Premiership skipper. Brent Stanton played a lot of footy in number 5. It should go to Archie Perkins.
Okay.
He should be wearing number 5 next year. He's the perfect player for it. He's wearing 16 at the moment. I think number 5 is a much better number at the footy club, and it just
an upgrade.
suits him better. So this is sort of our niche exchange area. We love numbers. He plays hard, tough footy, fan favourite already. I think number 5 would suit Archie and the way he
Like
plays
that.
really well. So I'm interested in what Essendon supporters would think about number 5 at the Bombers and who should be wearing that next year. Number 17 at West Coast.
Big shoes to
I
fill.
don't know exactly where to send 17. Maybe
might
maybe it
draft
has
a
a
key
year
forward.
off.
Maybe, yes.
Well, they could. Maybe it is their first pick at the draft this year, whoever it is. Does it matter what type of player you are? Like, do
Like
good
for
question.
like, is that what you mean?
because, the midfielders are at the top of the pool this year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's a good question.
could you see George Wardlaw or Elijah Sardis in number 17? Or do you have to wait before you get a key forward?
Yeah.
Oscar Allen's at 12. It's pretty rare you go back.
Yeah, that is unusual.
Number 12 at Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I almost think it's the first selection at the draft next year.
What about our man Angus Sheldrick?
What number is he right now?
29.
Just had a
What about Justin McInerney? 27.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he feels like a 27 to me, J Mac. That just feels
like
right.
Intrinsic feel. It's a shame that Chad Warner actually swapped out of jumper numbers a couple of years ago.
Because he's one now.
Yeah, but
One's
he
a
would have
good-
been.
one's
Oh no,
a
but
good-
he would have been a good 12.
What about number 23? That'll be interesting. Number 16 at Fremantle.
Well, I thought this because Caleb Sarong and Andrew Brayshaw, if they had have been different numbers to start their career, would have been perfect for that number.
I think Neil Erasmus gets
I've got
the
him
upgrade
down too.
Yeah.
from 28.
Yep.
There are going to be a fair few more opening up, though, so I'm keen to hear from our listeners on
Yeah.
some of their jumper
a
numbers.
great
Because
question.
people love jumper numbers. Like, jumper numbers go crazy on our website every year.
We
when
did
do the
that.
jumper
Remember we
numbers.
did that. I think a couple of years ago we did a question on Exchange about what players don't suit their jumper numbers, and I reckon it was like one of the most interactive
Yes.
things we got back. Fans were just like clamouring to
He's
say
not
how-
a 6. There's not a chance he's a 6.
Joe Danaher is a 3 and Riley Thilthorpe is a 7. Got a few people, just like the name Riley Thilthorpe just got me.
All right,
So
Sarah.
Kane Lambert's giving up number 23,
Yes.
and I reckon Morris Rioli should take it.
Okay,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a good one.
that's a good
Yeah.
one. What's Mo?
Mo. I thought his name was Mo.
Well,
Are we running with Mo as a nickname?
Well, I mean, I think it's more Moz.
Moz. Mo. Go Mo.
Yeah,
Go Mo or go home. Anyway, that's one I liked.
I like it.
Love it.
Sarah, speaking of the Tigers,
Yeah.
how far can they go in September?
Well, I've been quite bullish on the Tigers all year and that you wouldn't want to face them in September, especially if that game is at the MCG. And we're talking about Geelong as the benchmark of the competition. You don't have to go far back to that incredible helter-skelter game at the G on a Saturday night where the Tigers could have won. It was seesawing everywhere. In the end, it was Geelong by 3 points. They're the second highest scoring team in the competition, so they know how to kick a winning score, and that forward line is starting to look potent. Lynch, of course, on the weekend, bagging 8. We're talking about Morris Rioli Jr. and his pressure up forward. Shea Bolton, even though he was quiet on the weekend. And then you've got Mr. September himself, Dustin Martin, ready to come back into the team. Who knows what kind of shape he'll be in or what impact he'll make. But I think that they've got a finals win in them, and they might really upset a team on the way through. Since round 6, even though their form's been patchy, they haven't lost a game by more than a goal. So they've always been in these games, even if they haven't necessarily won the ones they should have. Of course, they had that weird little patch where they lost to the Gold Coast and North, and then they had that draw with Fremantle. But I'm thinking they've definitely got a win in them this September, Ross.
Yeah, I think they're well and truly capable of taking a scalp somewhere. How far they can go, though, I think it depends a lot on Dusty. I mean, not because he's crucial to their success this season, because obviously he's been out of the side. He hasn't had his best year from an individual perspective, but he is the one, when we speak about you only need to win 3 or 4 games to win a flag, he's the one that's capable of breaking open 3 or 4 games to help them to a flag. I mean, he's done it 3 times already. So I think they can grab a scalp. They'll play in an elimination final. We spoke about the permutations before, whether or not that's against Melbourne, whether or not that's against Collingwood, someone else. They are well and truly capable of winning a game like that, particularly if Tom Lynch plays like he did in the weekend. How far and how deep they go in September, I think that depends on whether or not Dustin Martin can come back, how he can come back, and how much of an impact he can have when he comes back.
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot is resting on that. But I do see them being able to win a final. I can't see them winning it still. But I could see them winning a final or two, depending on fixture and if they can stay at the G.
You're listening to AFL Exchange. Time now for Things That Should Happen. Riles, you kick us off.
All right, well, I got 2. My things that should happen, we spoke about this before, Melbourne's forward line and the issues, particularly if Tom McDonald can't come back for the first final is still around 2 or 3 weeks away from returning to full training. I would this weekend trial Christian Petrarca forward, almost exclusively forward. I don't think they've done that enough this year, and I think there's good reason for why they haven't, because he's great in the midfield. He had an unbelievable season in the midfield last year as well, catapulted them to a flag. They've got James Harms in the VFL who can't get in at the moment. He had 35 touches for Casey on the weekend. Everyone's been talking about whether or not he can come in for a half-back that would allow him to play midfield and potentially Angus Brayshaw to go to half-back again. Angus Brayshaw's been great in the midfield. Keep him there. Why not bring him in for a forward, replace Petrarca's midfield minutes with Harms, and see if Petrarca can be that difference maker playing almost exclusively as a forward. I think they've got the perfect opportunity potentially to trial that this weekend
I like
against
it.
Brisbane.
Hasn't his goal kicking been totally off this year?
He gets the shots though,
Yeah.
and that's from midfield.
He's creative
so,
too. He doesn't need it to be set shots as much. I think he's better when the ball's on the ground sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he makes stuff happen. His one-on-one stuff's incredible.
Yeah. And I've got a variation of things that should happen that I want to throw at you two.
Okay.
Happen things should that?
Yeah. should this weekend, should this thing happen? And I want your answers to it.
Okay.
Players get to a game before they're playing it about 2 hours before. So Carlton players will get to the MCG at about 1:30 on Sunday. Should the Carlton coaching group be letting the Blues players know what the score is, how the game is going in Tasmania when they're about to play at the MCG?
Yes.
How should they be preparing for that mentally?
Well, they're grown men. I mean, there's always factors at
Do you
play.
want to limit any distractions possible, though? If you say phone's in the booth,
Well,
you can't see them, you don't know what's going to happen, go out there and run out without being burdened by the result.
I imagine that's probably the way they'll play it regardless, won't they?
They'll just know that they have to win. That's
Yeah.
non-negotiable, right?
But
Probably-
if Hawthorn's 3 goals up at three-quarter time, like, do you want them knowing that?
Or we'll watch it flash up on the scoreboard at the G.
I don't think they're watching the scoreboard.
There'll be a cheer that
Yeah. Something
it'd be
will
like
alert
that Liverpool
people.
moment, Riley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things that should happen.
Yeah.
Sorry,
That was a good question by me.
it was.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
That variation.
What do you think?
I'd almost be tempted to just say you don't know anything. We're not going to say this publicly, but we don't want you knowing anything about this game.
Things that should happen very quickly on the back of the Patrick Cripps saga. There's got to be something fixed in terms of
Oh, yeah.
the bumping
Oh, yeah.
that happens in the game, whether intentional or not. The Zane Cordy one's a really fascinating one for me. I don't think he meant to get his head at all, and he didn't leave the ground.
No one means to get the head.
Well,
though.
that's not true. Some people can.
A lot of these instances you don't mean
Well,
to
if
get
you leave the
head.
ground, you're throwing that excuse up in the air.
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt like the Zane Cordy one's
Paddy Wright is the best comparison to this one, isn't
very
it?
unlucky, and so is Tanner Bruin. But Zane Cordy unlucky. That should happen anyway.
Things that should happen, and I'm doubling down from the other week, and we did kind of touch on it before. If you're going into finals, you need to identify a player who is capable of playing that cooling role, because we've seen it with such great effect in recent weeks. Of course, we just spoke to Marcus Windhager. He kept Lockie Neal to his lowest possession count this season. Finn McGuinness on Shea Bolton at the weekend. That
He was Neil's Achilles heel.
And of course, Ryan Clark on Nick Dacos. I just think if you can identify a player heading into September that can take away a strength from another team, you're already off to a great start.
Here's the things that should happen just on the fly, taking on that one. A club in the 8 should be able to pick one player from an opposition team that's not made the finals to go and play finals for them.
Ooh,
So, like,
who would you pick?
well, like things that should happen, at a certain rate. So it's like someone needs a tagger, you go and get Marcus Windhager for the finals.
Okay.
Finals trade period.
I'd probably pick...
One a club.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably other players I'd select if I had to, but
I'll
like,
tell you what, but how do you
There's a
get
budget.
that? Like, whatever happens this
we haven't
weekend...
thought through the detail.
Whatever happens
mate.
this
It's all
weekend,
about
I
the
reckon
big
they're
ideas.
lining up for Patrick Cripps or Marcus Bontempelli.
It's all about the big ideas.
Melbourne might ask for Charlie Kerner or Harry Mackay.
Yeah.
Riley,
Yes.
have you gone picking your 22 under 22 side because it's
gone
22
well, Cal.
under 22 season
Yeah.
with the AFLPA?
Do you know what so what I'll say is the position that's most stacked for young talent? Running defenders.
Yeah.
So I couldn't pick between like Dacos, Quaynor, Young, Coleman, Blakey. There's a lot of them.
absolute locks in there for the under 22 side. Walsh, Rosie, Brayshaw, Warner, Norton. I think Goulden's almost a lock.
Yes.
I think Dacos is a lock. Sam De Koning's a lock. I think Cam Rayner's probably in there. Noah Anderson's a lock as well. Ginnivan's a lock. Sarong's a lock.
Who'd you have as captain and vice captain, Cal? I had
Brayshaw as
Andy
captain.
Brayshaw as captain and Sam Walsh as vice.
Yep. That's fair.
Yep.
I think that's fair.
I had Brayshaw captain, Errol Goulden vice.
I had Nick Dacos captain.
What are we?
It's actually quite hard to fit them all in because there is some genuine talent. Not ideal that the Eagles didn't get any nominations, is it? Given where they are on
They
the
haven't had
ladder.
a high draft pick in.
That's true, and
years.
that's why they can't trade their first round pick at this year's draft. But it is a tough task, but you can do it on the AFLPA website. So go and get to it, and suss it out and shoot them through.
Cal, with a month to go in the season, how is the top 10 of the draft shaping up?
Well, there's been some interesting moments in recent weeks. I mean, George Wardlaw's hamstring injury over the weekend makes things pretty interesting at the top end. It added an extra element of intrigue, I'd say, to where things sit at the very top. Here he is very early in the season, number 5, kicking a goal, if you're watching, for the Oakley Chargers. That was one of his best games of the year. He was best on ground that day. He was best on ground for the AFL Academy against Collingwood's VFL side. So in the big games, he's dominated and played really well. So there's no doubt about that. He's a guy you'd want on your team, given how tough he is. He stands up at the big moments. We've seen that already. But he missed about 7 or 8 weeks with a hamstring injury that then had another little niggle and then came back on the weekend at school level. Within the first 5 minutes was injured again with another strain. So I think it's probably curtains for his season at this point, which is a shame because I think
How
if he had
worried
come...
about his hamstrings, are you?
Well, I mean, it doesn't keep me up at night, but I'm sure clubs will... I'm sure clubs will be looking at it and medically assessing it. Look, I don't think clubs will let him slip too far, if he does slip at all. But they'd obviously be assessing what's happened there and if there's been a management thing or whatever, to see the reasons behind it. But he didn't get much through on the weekend. It is setting up an interesting thing, though, for North Melbourne because if they keep pick one, I think they have to bid on Will Ashcroft. It's just too clear that he's the best performed player in it this year. But it is the year that I think number 1 pick should be put properly on the table. Said, come and get it. What have you got for it? Does anyone want it? The problem is, of course, that if they're willing to give up pick 1, then another club probably isn't as willing to move up the board to get it as much as previous years. We know what Adelaide and Richmond threw at pick 1 last year. Jai Clark's right up there in the draft pecking order. I think there's clubs inside the top 5 that will be looking at him very, very closely.
How many genuine number 1 contenders are there? Is
Well,
it just 2, do you reckon?
I think Ashcroft's going to be number 1.
Like, how many players would there be before you go, I'd be shocked if they were number 1?
I think Ashcroft's going to be number 1 pick.
Okay. Regardless of who has it.
Yeah, I mean, unless... I'd be surprised if a bid doesn't come and pick number 1 at this point.
What's that, 3 or 4 years in a row now? We've had a similar situation.
Right at the top.
I know it hasn't always eventuated, but...
Elijah Sardas will be up there right in the top rungs. Aaron Cadman's pushed himself into that top 5 conversation. Matt Jefferson's a really good player as well. And there's a guy called Bailey Humphrey who's pushed himself into that rung as well, who would be the ultimate bolter. But, yeah, there's some of the names that are right in that top group. I was actually at, I think, what would be the best under-18, well, best school game I've seen ever on the weekend.
Really?
Ever.
What about when Nick Dacos kicked the goal after the siren
That
when
was
he
a
was
pretty
about
good
12
game.
years old?
That was a pretty good game.
Who was playing?
Sitting next to Pete Dacos and Colleen that day. This was Caulfield Grammar and Brighton Grammar. It was the pseudo grand final in the APS competition in Melbourne, and it was a who's who of who's there. Clarko was there, watching his son Matt play. Adam Uze, so he was there as well. He's got a son who's at Caulfield. Dermy was there. Hawthorn players, Essendon players.
Cal obviously wasn't there when
Draftees were
Eltham
playing.
High played Diamond Valley back in the day.
Recruiters everywhere, crowd of... But it was a draw. But Nick the Wizard Watson, this was the grand final. Nick the Wizard Watson kicked 4 goals in the first half. And then Cam McKenzie, who is a player who's right in that top 5 rung as well, lifted Brighton back in the second half, 96 apiece. I don't think I've seen a game like it. And it was a drawn premiership.
No extra time.
No, because it's just there's no grand final essentially in that competition. So it's just another round. And recruiters were everywhere.
Love
It's
it.
good to see those big days.
Sarah,
Riley.
Charlie Curnow, 3 goals clear in the Coleman medal race. Who wins the AFL's goal kicking award?
Well, I hope it is Charlie, just to cap off the fantastic year that he has had after such a trying time on the sidelines. Jeremy Cameron, though, is just 3 goals behind.
With West Coast at
And the
home.
Cats play West Coast at GMHBA Stadium. So it is setting up for Cameron to potentially kick a bag. Having said that, though, if the Blues are to get over the line, you'd expect Charlie to have a really big day. So he's still leading by 3 goals. Can I just say, if Tom Lynch hadn't gotten injured this year,
Yeah.
he's winning the Coleman.
Well, he might still kick 15 this week.
Well, I mean, the news is just through as well that Jeremy Cameron will miss this weekend with a
Oh.
Hey, there you go.
hamstring injury. So
Well, Charlie,
come on down, Charlie
it's yours
Curnow.
to sew up. Is he getting rested?
No. He came to the bench late in the final quarter of Saturday's game against Gold Coast after reporting some low-level hamstring symptoms, says Harry Taylor, which always makes me smile.
That is weird, isn't it?
The Cats chose to take a no-risk policy and decided not to have him return to the field. The Cats have just
Well,
put out.
this ruins this question then, doesn't it?
That's like live as that happened.
Yeah.
Well, Tomahawk would need a big day, wouldn't he?
What is he? 7
He's
behind.
7
isn't he?
behind.
It's 55,
so
yeah.
it's unlikely. It's good news for Charlie. It's good news for you, Riley, because you've written a great story on
I'm just
Tuesday.
breathing a sigh of relief. I've been stressed about this for about a week.
About Charlie Curnow. It's a great read if any Carlton supporters or any footy supporters want to know a little bit more about Charlie's story. Read Riley's story on Tuesday morning. Or if you're listening to this in a couple of days, rewind yourself and go back.
That'll be on the AFL Live app and afl.com.au. You're listening to...
How many people do you speak to about that story?
How many what, sorry?
How many people do you speak to about Charlie?
In the end, it would have been about 15 to 20 on and off the record.
That's incredible.
It was a long
What's the
time in
one
making.
thing you'd say about Charlie after...
Oh, this is funny, actually. I reckon I asked every single one of the 15 to 20 people that I spoke to if you could describe Charlie Curnow as a person and as a footballer, what would they be? And I reckon, without joke, I didn't even say that this is what other people had described him by. They all just said, he's a big kid. He's a big kid, and that's the way he lives his life as a person. He's a fun-loving person, and he's a big kid on the footy field that plays the exact same way he did when he was 5 years old on the playground. So that's what came through most, I think, about Charlie Curnow when I was speaking to people about him.
You're listening to AFL Exchange. Just a bit of feedback before we wind up. And obviously, lots of feedback about Siggy wearing a washing bucket on his head on Sunday. What was he doing?
What was he doing? We need to get Siggy on the show.
Yeah.
Yes, we do need to get Siggy
What
on
was-
the show.
Why was he wearing a washing bucket on his head?
I don't know. Was it good weather on Sunday? Maybe Siggy's killing 2 birds with one stone. I don't know.
I don't know if he's at home, great around the house.
No. He'd leave his dishes in the sink, Siggy.
Mike said Siggy has a lookalike. Fred Bird from the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
In
We're gonna
the
have to look
MLB.
Fred Bird up.
I'm getting him up now.
Does sort of look like him. Elliot pointed out some obscure work on the Adelaide Oval scoreboard, a favourite topic of ours in season pass. The Crows' name was in yellow and the score was in white, while North's name was in white and the score in yellow. It was like zigzagged up and down.
Yeah, that was weird.
And for the colourblind among us, I mean, just more anti-colourblind.
Yeah.
Ethan claiming Machito Owens as his man.
The Rizzle. Death taxes and his dog barking every time he hears the truck pull up for the Rising Star nominee. Have we got the truck? Is the truck still backing up? There he is.
It's actually funny you say that because
You didn't have to give us feedback, Rizzle.
my partner Hannah just texted me saying she just put exchange on at home, and Enzo, my dog, just freaked out when he started hearing me.
The truck. Sean from Sydney. Death taxes and us 3 laughing at every stinger.
Yeah.
They are weird. Jimmy said Charlie Dixon would be the arm wrestling
That's a good
champ in the competition. Jax has said Marcus Adams. Tom Hawkins and Steph Martin would be right up there. Lockie said Marcus Adams or Stephen May with Jager O'Meara. A sneaky chance.
And Reese has got into our HR team. He says, please give Michael Whiting some time off after his marathon sessions at the AFL Tribunal.
Here.
Fish had a big night on Thursday.
He wasn't swimming with the fishes on Thursday night. He was.
No, but he wasn't floundering. He was dominating. He was dominating.
He was speaking so much about the tribunal thing. I was actually thinking he could talk underwater.
Hey, he didn't flake it.
And on that note, that's all from us on AFL Exchange. We'll see you
Sorry,
at the same
Fish.
time next week because it's getting real fishy in here.